Okay, so this book obviously addresses the main question. Are we smart enough to know how smart animals really are? And everything that DeWall does connects to this idea. And as he's doing this, really his main purpose is to shatter the idea of what humans think make them unique. So, DeWall is an ethologist who works specifically with primates. So, lots of his examples through this book have to do with primates. But he, from a young age, like in college, undergrad, I think, he worked and learned from founders of ethology like Tinbergen, who had great impacts on the field of ethology. But DeWall kind of took it from a different, unique perspective of animal intelligence, where he compared everything to humans. And so through this book, DeWall is really shattering the definition of what makes a human unique. And so all of his examples and everything ties back to that. So he begins by teaching about whelp, which is our perception placed onto an animal. So we really have no idea what's going on inside an animal's head or why they're doing what they're doing. But as humans, we can speculate. But really, that's from our perception. Like, they have very different goals, animals have very different purposes, and so we really don't know, but we can speculate based on our understanding of things. And so this kind of sets the tone for the entire rest of the book. He goes into the history of ethology by talking about past assumptions, and they're crazy, kind of. And then he talks about our current transformative understandings of these specific ideas. So, for each of these understandings, they all relate to humans, as I've said previously, but he uses like so many animals, probably 15 or more, like crows, parrots, dogs, wow, chimpanzees, bats, whales, dolphins. Like, he just has a huge spectrum, even insects like wasps and spiders and stuff. He has a whole spectrum of different organisms to help drive home his understanding of these things and to teach that humans are really not that different from these other animals and the behaviors they display. So he goes through ideas like empathy and justice, human strategic behavior, facial recognition, willpower, learning, linguistic communication. He talks a lot about the use of tools and how important that is. Identity, skill, perception, social behaviors, and so much about cognition and intelligence. And for all of those, he gives examples, like specific examples, and more than one example too, which I really liked, is how repetitive it was, but with different animals. So he teaches about the evolutionary adaptations and why these animals have developed this, which kind of takes an interesting turn. Like, as you're reading this book, it makes you think about how humans developed these things and why we do what we do. So I really liked how interconnected everything was. Um, so he just then goes on through each example to talk about how each experiment was performed and how we gained the information that we now have from scientists. He talked about how different ways of performing an experiment can change the outcome and can completely change our understanding of that and how we can get rid of those things that are affecting that. So some of my favorite examples were things like monkeys using tools for eating, but also octopuses use tools like coconuts to like put over themselves for shelter. He talked about how animals plan for bad weather. They prepare to make and keep things dry. He talked about cooperation and altruism in fish. He talked about how chimps and crows use facial recognition and hold grudges. He talked about how elephants use mirrors to better learn their body and to help them as tools. And then he talked about lots of similar communications between other animals and specifically like birds and humans or monkeys and humans. Like, everything, he took this idea of what makes us human and was like, well, actually, also all these animals do it, and this is how they do it, and this is why they do it. And it really just changes your entire perspective on humans. And so, interwoven are these principles that humans are not as cool as we think, I guess. Or we are cool, but also animals are cool as well. And so he really wants humans to understand and have this knowledge of animals so that we can better interact with the natural world. He wants us to replace our human mechanistic understandings of animals and get rid of them. He wants it to be replaced by an understanding that animals are very intricate and very complex, and that we have no idea really. We're just scratching the surface of ethology in understanding how connected humans and other organisms really are. So after finishing this book, I was quite sad. I wanted so much more. I wanted to keep learning. I actually ended up watching a whole bunch of documentaries. Like, this book really sparked something in me that I was not prepared to understand or to learn. I thought I would just be learning about different animals and how they were cool, but really, like, everything in this book was so interconnected. I was surprised at how even the smallest examples of an animal's behavior was connected to everyday things in my life. Like, he talked a lot about teacher to student relationships, meaning like the master and the experiment or test subject. But it all related to how students learn and how teachers can best teach. There was a lot about like the ideas of identity and how we can help people understand their identity and how we can perceive other people's identity. He connected a lot of things in science to like real life skills, which was really cool because as a science teacher, like, that's what we want to do, is help use science to teach important skills like critical thinking and rethinking ideas, changing opinions, things like that. And so I really loved this book. I was very impressed at how much I loved it. I'm actually in an animal behavior class right now, and I think that this book should be taught in that class. Like, we have a textbook in that class, but this book taught almost exactly the same thing that I'd been reading about in my textbook all year, but 100 times better. It was like so enthralling. It was something that kept me on my toes. I kept wanting to read more about it. There were so many good examples. So all these ideas of evolution and of animal behavior, things that like scientists need to understand, they're all in there in a very easy to read kind of way. And so this book was exciting. It was something that taught me a lot. Like, I feel like I have so much of a better understanding of simple things like how animals interact with each other and how humans interact with each other. I really appreciated DeWall's unique take on different things and how I feel like it could have been upsetting to some people if they didn't go into reading this book with an open mind. He kind of bashes humans a little bit, but that's not his intention. It's more saying that, like, humans are not here. Like, they're not that much higher than other animals. Like, other animals are up there as well. And it just kind of destroys this idea that we are the best. So, which could be, some people could take in a bad way, but I really liked how he did it, and I thought it was in a very respectful way. And obviously, like, everything he said was backed up by so much evidence, which for me is proof. It just shows that he's not just pulling these out of nowhere. He has a good understanding of what's going on. So overall, I really loved this book. In my class, I probably wouldn't use this book, but I would definitely use excerpts and quotes. Like, I think it would be really fun to write them on the board every day. Like, I kind of want to have some sort of something on the board every day for students to see. Like, it might be like a meme or it might be whatever, but I think incorporating quotes from this book could be really beneficial. They're just very thought-provoking and things that I don't think students would get any other place. So I think that they could be really beneficial. I would definitely use lots of these case studies in this book. I would give students a paper with an experiment that happened and how they did the experiment and what they found, and just kind of help use it to teach ideas about evolution or about animal behavior or genetics or whatever we're focusing on. I think that almost all of chapter 4 in the Utah Core is pretty well connected to this entire book. One of my favorite examples that he uses is that he teaches about an experiment where an ape and a child were both given the same task. They both had a tube, and the tube was full of water. Like, at the bottom was a little bit of water, and there was a peanut in it, and they had to get the peanut to the top so they could reach it and eat it. And the child just sat there kind of like, okay, what do we do? Couldn't reach his hand in there, so it kind of gave up. But the ape ended up looking around the room and seeing that there was a pitcher of water in the other side of the room, and took the pitcher of water and poured it into the tube, which made the peanut float up to the top so he could grab it. And so he talked about this example quite a lot in teaching that children are like not great at critical thinking. We're not great at thinking outside the box, and how that there are lots of things in life we can learn from animals, and if we use it to our ability, it can make us better as a human species. It can teach us things that are important for our understanding, it that can make us more evolved and have better use of tools and have better use of resources and use our brains in different ways. And so I really like everything that de Waal is teaching, and how interconnected it all is, and how it really is a life-changing book. So I would recommend this book to lots of different kinds of people. There are some people who sure wouldn't enjoy it, but I think that if you're a psychologist or any kind of scientist, whether it's like chemistry or physics or whatever, any kind of scientist, even doctors and things, I think the ideas, and for sure teachers, all of these ideas are so interconnected and interwoven to everyday real life things that, like I said, we can learn so much from these examples and what these animals are doing. So I would recommend it to anyone. Already I have like 3 or 4 friends reading it. I really like that this book is accessible. I found the PDF for free online version, and then also they have an audiobook on YouTube that's free. So it's not like it's a hard resource to use. So I think if you can get access like that, and it will really change your perspective so much, I think it needs to be used more, and that more people should read it and would really benefit. It really could. If everyone read it, it might have a huge, significant impact on the way we view things and our interactions with the natural world and interactions with each other. It's a life-changing book. So overall, 10 out of 10. I loved this book, and I think that lots of people should read it.